Tapes and Tales.
Hello and welcome to the show. Awkward situations is the theme of today's episode, and we're going to be bringing you 3 brilliant stories about people getting themselves into a tight spot. This is Tapes and Tales. I'm Dan Jagger. Stay with us.
Tapes and Tales. Tapes and Tales.
Have you ever got yourself into an awkward situation? Of course you have. Everybody has. Coming up, stories from Abby Hynes, Mercedes Dawson. But first, here's a story from Andy Knudsen.
Blind Guy by Andy Knudsen. A guy called Raymond started at my work. He was from South Africa and he was blind. He was tall, with black hair, grey at the temples. There was always a patch of his face that was unshaven, but other than that, he was always immaculately turned out. Always smart, always sporting a shirt and tie. I would watch Raymond at his desk with his headphones on so his computer could talk to him. I couldn't tell what he was doing. His computer screen looked different to mine. A few times a day he would make phone calls, always laughing, always managing to charm whoever was on the line, always getting what he wanted and saying thank you 1,000,000 times for it. When we spoke, I would stare hard at his deep-set eyes, wondering what it was about them that had failed him. They would dart all round the room like he was taking everything in. It made me wonder if he wasn't really blind at all and it was just a ploy for sympathy and attention from the ladies. He was a good-looking guy. The ladies loved him and he loved them. They doted on him and would say his name over and over again when talking to him, just in case he thought they were talking to someone else. There was always a lady or two on hand to help him walk anywhere. "Geez, mate," he said in his thick South African accent. "Isn't it great working with all these beautiful ladies?" That convinced me he really was blind. You should see them, I thought, but I just said yes. Within a couple of weeks, Raymond had revolutionized the finance department. My boss, who seemed to think she was my friend, came in raving to me about how this was the most efficient the department had ever been. Even the college manager had praised her for the smooth running of financial procedures. All I knew was that my workload had become smaller and I was glad about that. There were 2 urinals and I was standing at one of them, waiting for something to happen. I have trouble sometimes. Raymond came clattering through the door, white stick in hand. "Hi, Raymond," I said, just to let him know I was there. "Hi, Dan, mate." Then he said some shit about the ladies. I'm not one of those guys in toilets who sneaks a glance when you're at the urinal sizing up the competition. But something made me look down at Raymond's, and since he was blind, I figured it didn't matter. I think it was the distinct red tint of what was splashing against the clean white porcelain that made me do it. I stood, watching, staring. Raymond appeared to be pissing blood. I lost myself in that for a minute before I realised my own piss was squirting out at an angle and had gone all over my trousers. Shit. "You alright?" asked Raymond. "Yeah, just pissed on myself." "You want to watch that?" he smirked. "Yeah." He finished, washed up and clattered out of there. I finished up and washed my hands. I splashed a load of water on my trousers where I'd wet myself. I don't know what for. I guess I was going to make up some story about the taps coming on too fast and splashing me. It was better than saying I'd pissed myself, but no one noticed anyway. Later that week, I was having lunch with Will from marketing and I told him I'd seen Raymond pissing blood. He chewed like a cow and looked at me. Then he put down his fork, opened his mouth and roared with laughter. I could see the rough pate of his half-chewed food clumped behind his bottom teeth. When he composed himself, he finished chewing and swallowed. Then he went back to his food. "Well, should I say something or not?" I asked. He smirked at me. "How do you tell someone you work with that they're pissing blood?" he asked rhetorically, patting his fork against his closed lips. "You don't," he said, and went back to his food. "But he's blind. I might be the only person who ever sees his piss." "Would you tell him if he wasn't blind?" Will pointed his fork at me. "No, if he wasn't blind, he'd be able to see his own piss." This was news to Will, and he mused on it for a second. "Oh yeah, but you can't tell him." He returned to his food. "Why not?" It's not a question of why not, it's a question of how would you. That made sense to me. I had no idea how to tell him, and that was the problem. I decided to forget about it. Of course, said Will, without looking up from his plate. He could be dying, and you're the only person who can save him. He looked up and smiled. I decided to ignore that and tucked into my own food. As usual, when I don't know how to handle something, I tried to forget about it and hoped it would sort itself out. I never stood next to Raymond at the urinals again, but I would often go in there and see them spattered with brown-red residue. A couple of months went by, and Raymond came to the end of his contract. A collection went round along with a big leaving card that everybody was signing. My boss brought it to me and hovered while I thought of something to write. And then it struck me. I had a plan. "Do you mind leaving it with me?" I asked her. "I have trouble thinking of things to write in these cards." I smiled up at her. "That's fine," she said, and started to walk away. "Just leave it on my desk when you're done." "To Raymond," I wrote. "Been great working with you. Thanks for everything you've done. All the best for the future, Dan." In a different colour pen, in discreet block capitals that looked nothing like my real handwriting, my shaking hand wrote, "Raymond, you are pissing blood. You need to see a doctor." My face felt hot and my scalp itched. I looked around and with my hand still shaking closed the card and slipped it into its envelope. I put £5 into the collection envelope and felt generous. Then, making sure I walked like someone with a clear conscience, I went to my boss's office. She wasn't there. I put both envelopes on her desk and walked out, still doing my best to convey innocence. At the end of the week, we had Raymond's leaving do. It was one of those drab occasions where everyone piled into our office to drink tiny amounts of warm, tart white wine from plastic cups, and one of those occasions when I realised I'd rather be trapped at the bottom of an empty well at night than exchanging pleasantries with my colleagues. My boss gave an awkward, uninspiring speech, thanking Raymond for everything he had done over the last few months and wishing him well with whatever he was moving on to. Then she handed a gift to him. It was wrapped, and I wondered why. "Hey, a bottle. Is it wine?" asked Raymond. "Yes, it's Merlot," said my boss. Around the room, a couple of other people said Merlot too, because they wanted to be the ones to answer him. "Great, my favourite," he said, and shone a smile around the room like a lighthouse. He also got a new set of headphones and a couple of talking books. He seemed pleased. He was genuine and gracious, and for the first time I was worried that he might really be ill, and that my inaction might have hurt him. "And," said my boss, like a game show host, "we also got you this card that everybody signed. I'll read you some of the messages people have written, okay?" "Yes, please go ahead," said Raymond. "Okay, there's one here that says, 'Dear Raymond, thanks for always being lovely and kind. You will be missed. Love, Sheila in HR.'" Sheila blushed and everyone went, "Aww." "Thanks, Sheila," said Raymond. "I'll miss you too." Everyone laughed. "And there's one here that says, 'Raymond, you have been a shining light for us all. The very best of luck in everything that you do. Much love.' And that's from Linda in the press office." "Thanks, Linda," said Raymond. He stood with his back to the wall, holding his white stick in front of him with both hands. He looked timid and smaller than usual, like he was dwarfed by all the people who were there for him. I don't know if I wanted my boss to find my secret message right there and then, but the choice wasn't mine. "And there's one here that says, 'Raymond, you are pissed.'" Her lipstick smile contorted into a lopsided smear. "Right. Well, let's raise our glasses." Her voice shook and squeaked suddenly. "To Raymond." "To Raymond," everyone repeated like a congregation and drank from their plastic glasses. Raymond gave a speech in which he thanked everyone for making him feel welcome. He gave special thanks to everyone in his department and named me. People looked at me when he did. He said the college was a great place to work and wished us all well for the future. Throughout the speech, my boss played with her hands, looked at her shoes and bit her lips. She smiled when she was required to and clapped when Raymond finished. As the murmur of many conversations started up again, my boss took Raymond by the arm, led him into her office, and shut the door. I said quiet goodbyes to the people around me and left. I hope my boss managed to pass on my message. She never mentioned it. I never saw Raymond again. I hope he wasn't really sick.
Tapes and tales.
It's a story called Blind Guy by Andy Knudsen, and that was pretty awkward. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Tapes and Tales, and our website is tapesandtales.com. And if you want to record a story for us and send it in, there's information on the website that'll tell you how you can get in touch. Next up is Abby Hynes and a story called Evangeline.
Evangeline by Abby Hynes. Sarah had been lonely, you see, for a long time. She'd lain there patiently on Simon's desk, flat and unmoving, her blank view of the ceiling half obscured by a paperweight. She wasn't something to be worked on. She would never see her end result exalted on a canvas. And yet there was something in her charcoal lines he liked, and it amused him to keep her there, at the very edges of his eyeline as he worked, familiar enough to soon become invisible. But then one day, as Simon's pencil rested idle on a blank page, he started to draw. The lines of a figure emerged bold and sharp and interesting. The new girl was standing at an awkward angle, one hand on the silvery swell of her hip, her fingers strangely pointed. Her eyes appeared, dark and questioning. Her mouth bloomed full. Her hair, Sarah thought, ought to have been red. God, she was wonderful. Simon abandoned her feet and dress unfinished and left them alone together. And Sarah wished that she could crawl across the desk, lay herself on top of her and rub their shapes together until they smudged themselves into oblivion. Something had to be done. That night, when the moonlight spread itself across the studio, cool and white like cream, Sarah gathered all her little strength and tried to free herself. For several minutes she wrestled, almost tearing down the middle, and eventually her struggle woke the paperweight. What are you doing?" he groaned. "Oh, let me out, won't you?" Sarah pleaded. "Simon won't miss me. I've been lying here for years, and I must get to—" She stopped herself, but she couldn't help her charcoal eyes sliding sideways towards the beautiful drawing, and the paperweight felt the movement under his huge glass backside. "The new girl, eh? What are you going to do? Tear her up so that you can stay the favourite?" Sarah shook her head vigorously, leaving dirty track marks on the page. "Let me go and speak to her," she begged. "I've been alone for so long." The paperweight huffed, but gradually he started to rock himself backwards and forwards, a little further each time, until Sarah was able to inch her way out from under him. "Hello?" she called across the moonlit desk. "Hello there. Can you hear me?" At first there was no answer, and Sarah crept closer. But then, "Hello?" Her voice was just as Sarah had imagined it, in all the made-up conversations that she'd had with her so far. Sweet and smoky, like a lady from a film, like one of those jazz singers Simon liked to listen to while he worked. Sarah had already been half in love with her. Now her heart lurched as she tumbled down the rest of the way. "Hello? Is someone there?" They talked all night. Sarah thought her companion needed a name, something exotic perhaps, something out of the ordinary, like a character from a book, and so she christened her Evangeline. Evangeline was clever, and she had a funny reply ready for everything that Sarah had to say. She sat so that her half-drawn feet dangled prettily over the edge of the desk, and when Sarah made her laugh, she tossed her head so that her hair shook and spread itself over her shoulders. Sarah thought, "She's so lovely, I might die." And by the time the sun came up, they were lovers, and they both smoothed down the new creases they had left on each other. They hid themselves in Simon's inkwell. They had to curl themselves together, round and round, so tightly rolled that all they could see were each other's faces, upside down. When Simon returned to find Evangeline missing, and spent 5 minutes chatting to himself and searching for her, Sarah thought she heard her companion let out a sigh that was almost like regret, though it couldn't be, because they loved each other so much, and they were going to be happy, coiled like a seashell and close as skin forever. The days passed. Evangeline's beautiful face, with those full lips, those questioning eyes, was always there. It was the first thing Sarah saw when she woke in the morning, and the last thing she looked at before dark fell. Her unfinished feet nestled snugly at Sarah's back. They breathed the same little patch of air, in and out, alternating like a seesaw. Sometimes, when Evangeline couldn't sleep, Sarah would sing to her, changing the words of all the songs they knew to include her sweetheart's name. "Oh, my darling, oh, my darling." The weeks blurred into months. It seemed to Sarah that Evangeline was growing bigger somehow, or at least taking up more space. Her silly, half-drawn feet were digging into Sarah's spine. Those swollen lips seemed a fraction closer every time she blinked. There wasn't much to talk about, living sheltered in the inkwell as they did, and so after a while they lapsed into silence. Sarah took to humming to herself. A year turned round, and then another. Evangeline slept for long periods of time, though Sarah began to suspect that sometimes she was just pretending. When she was bored, she liked to make a little clicking noise with her tongue and teeth, which made Sarah want to tear her face right down the middle. At night, she would wrap her stupid, pointy fingers around Sarah's arms, pretending to cuddle, but really fighting for more space and leaving little charcoal bruises. "Shift up, won't you?" Sarah hissed one night, when Evangeline had managed to jam her knee hard into Sarah's stomach, crumpling her paper. Simon had left the window open, and a cold breeze was drifting over the desk, fluttering their edges. "Stop that," said Evangeline. "I'm the one who should be crying. I might have been a real painting if I'd stayed with Simon. The least you could do is let me have a bit more space." And with that, Evangeline kicked Sarah so hard that she dislodged herself, tipping up over the edge of the inkwell and rolling onto the desk. "Help!" she called out. "Sarah, help me! Pull me back down!" Sarah thought about how lonely she'd been without Evangeline, how beautiful and strange she'd seemed, how they'd curled up together now for so long that they seemed to think each other's thoughts. "Sarah, for God's sake, hurry up, will you? It's cold and windy up here. This is no time for you to have one of your sulks." Sarah thought about those long, silent days they'd spent seething at each other. She thought of Evangeline's horrible big mouth, her stupid not-red hair. She stretched her legs out in the inkwell and released months of cramp. "Sarah!" Evangeline's voice was high and nervous now. She seemed to have drifted further across the desk. Sarah scrunched herself down in her inkwell as deep as she could go. After a few minutes, a particularly strong gust of wind came along. It picked up Evangeline from the desk, tiny and weightless, and took her out of the window and away.
Tapes and Tales.
That was Abby Hynes reading a story called Evangeline. It was a very awkward situation there that happened to me once. Our final story of the episode is from Mercedes Dawson, and it's a story called Another Dead Girl. It's a classic awkward situation.
Blue lights, burnt matches. That's it. That's all I remember. Well, not really. I remember growing up, playing in the garden when my brothers wouldn't let me play with them. I remember my first day at college, passing my driving test after failing 3 times, going to uni and fucking this slightly camp but highly attractive guy from down the corridor who was way out of my league. And I remember that particular night at the Sugar House. Everything else? So vague, it's not even a blur I could hope to get into focus. And now I am sat on my ass, holding my heavy head in my hands, staring straight at the body of a pretty girl with no eyes. By now I'm past being in shock, and I seem to have bypassed hysteria, so where does this leave me? Empty. I have no energy in my limbs, and my throat is so dry I may never be able to speak my own voice again, but instead a rasp that recounts more about this moment than any words could ever recount escaping. I figure I've already checked to see if she's dead. Then again, I can't tell how long I've been here, or how I got here, so maybe I haven't. But the colour of her skin is enough to confirm to me that this girl is never going to get up. Okay, there's the nausea. Oh, and there's a dry heave, which, funnily enough, I actually welcome and dread all at the same time, because now I know I'm awake. Please don't let me find the eyes somewhere. My voice is already telling me I'm going to have a meltdown in the next few minutes. And this I also welcome, because now at least I can tell myself I'm a normal human being who feels something when presented with the memory loss and a dead girl. A dead girl. A dead girl, a dead girl, a dead girl, a dead girl, shit, a dead girl. Well, first I'm going to find my feet and get them to lead me to somewhere other than here, and then I'm going to panic. Big time. My shoes are absent, I notice. Feet scraped and dirty. Not good. Where the fuck have I been? Trying to pull the memories forward, but no, the throbbing in my temple is blocking everything from me. Hands. I have hands, right? Yes, there they are. Dirty too. Blood on my index finger. Mine? I spit on my hand to clean away the dried blood and dirt. Yes, mine. Torn nail. Shaking hands would be normal. My hands aren't shaking. Turning them over and over isn't changing that. I rub them over my face, slap my cheek to get me thinking, and the thought I have, the one resounding thought that is splattered through my brain where last night's memory should be, Jack Daniels. After doing the sensible thing and calling it in, I sit on the floor by the body and start to put my work head on. I search my pockets for a biro I vaguely remember having in my jacket and use it to start sifting through the debris around the dead girl. Under the hem of her summer dress, in itself odd seeing as it's December and freezing, there is a piece of paper sticking out. Using the edge of my shirt to pick it up, I hold it to the light and see that it's a grubby receipt with a telephone number written on it and underlined. Okay. There's also dirt, a lot of dirt. Under closer inspection, I can tell that the body has been placed, specifically placed, on dirt, where dirt should not be. We are both on the pavement and there's not a garden in reach, and yet the body has been placed on a puddle of dirt, just about the perfect shadow shape of the body. Interesting. I know I need to look at the eyes, but I'm so very much not ready for that. Why is it always the eyes? Involuntarily shuddering, I mentally note that trouble was certainly taken, and time was definitely taken as well. Again, this is not making me feel any more at ease. Just how long was I lying there? Was the body there first? Did I find the body and then something happen? Or something happen and a body turn up? I estimate about 10 minutes before the police find their way here, so I check myself for clues. My wallet and phone are still in my jacket, which rules out a random mugging, which I had discounted anyway, but hell, let's mentally check off everything, right? There's only a little dirt on my nails, which tells me that I haven't clawed at any ground, but that my hands have been rubbed in dirt, especially as the dirt on my hands seems to be gathered in a circular pattern. I can feel an ache in my jaw, and upon inspection infer that I've been sucker punched at some point, and the back of my head was matted with hair, which is either dirt or blood. Most likely blood. Great. In my jeans pocket there's the bus ticket I had from the last time I wore these, and also a receipt with what appears to be the same telephone number as on the dead girl's receipt, and in the same handwriting too. Checking out the receipt, they've come from the same place too. Northern Tea Power. I recognise this place as being in the northern quarter, city centre. Not looking good. Pretty obvious that I'm getting put into a particular frame here. If I wasn't so fucked, I'd be slightly flattered by the attention. I know I need to look. Need to see the bit of her that won't look back. Okay, here goes. 1, 2, 3. There's something in the way something... My God, I need to leave. My legs, now hollow, gave up pretending to know what the fuck to do and gave out. My mind that had clung with its very fingertips to not doing one into some sort of brain spasm, finally left the building without looking back and took all the blood with it. Total blackout. Almost 4 years and I still remember those empty sockets looking back at me, all hollow and empty. No glassy eyes to look back at me with accusation in there. No help me, no nothing. If the eyes are the windows to the soul, this particular residence was vacant. No squatters, no tenants staring out, or curtain twitching. Hell, I'd have been grateful if they'd been twitching. Twitching means remnants of something still there. And for her, definitely not there. For me, a shitload of dreams and a whole world of trouble. Jennifer Mayfield, city girl born and bred, churned out more like, had 6 siblings. She had been on her way back from a gig at night and day, took a detour to get some cigarettes from the newsagents near Affleck's, and stopped to give change to one of the nobodies that linger around that area with indefinite intent to stay doing just that. The security camera in the newsagents pinned the time at 11:45 p.m. The homeless nobody seems to think her donation was around midnight because a few more venues were at kick-out time. Then there's a void of almost 5 hours before she was to be my wake-up buddy. No one can find a trace of those 4 hours. A guy that had seen her at the gig was later questioned because 2 of Jennifer's friends had watched him watching her throughout the gig and subsequently left moments after she did. Alibi was solid though. Caught the 42 and met up with a few of his friends to watch shit movies until the early hours. The CCTV on the bus verified this for him. His stoner student mates backed up the rest. After the nobody and the gig pickup were cleared, attention turned back to me. Not that it was fully diverted in the first place, but no one likes the microscope pointed at one of her own. After hours of questioning and a little hypnotherapy, even I suspected me just from the sheer lack of anything I could come up with to say otherwise. Forensics proved there were no fingerprints or DNA remnants on Jennifer's skin. Her body had been meticulously wiped clean, except 2 muddy handprints perfectly smeared down her arms. Mine, don't you know? I was looking at jail time. Even with a decent lawyer, it wasn't looking good. And then little drugs testing saved my ass. Both myself and Jennifer had been spiked with the same drug, and from the amount left in the bloodstream it was shown that I had been knocked out first, rendering me incapable of doing to Jennifer what some little bastard had taken his, or her, merry sweet time doing. The eyes were taken out post-mortem. Small mercies, right? And the crime scene analyst had confirmed that we were placed into our waking positions. Well, my waking, her dying. Something about the way they placed Jennifer also suggested intimacy with which contradicted the nature of what had happened to her in those missing hours. But the clincher that cleared me was the part that no one had wanted to have happened. Jennifer had been raped by 2 people. Semen from 2 males had been found after a sweep, but the DNA didn't flag anything up on the database, so no names ever came up. The detective who really wanted to nail me for it couldn't argue with my severe lack of equipment to have done the job, but he almost looked like he was going to turn around and accuse me of undergoing some sort of secret sex change just to get away with it. The prick was an out-of-towner who, on first reading the manuscript of the scene, didn't realise Alex was short for Alexandra. Egg on face definitely occurred. I left the police pretty much that day and haven't looked back. The whistle of a kettle wakes me now. Same time every morning, and yet still the sound doesn't so much wake me up as shock me awake. And there's a distinctive difference. I know without looking that the clock will read 6:45 a.m. every damn morning, but still out of habits long built in, I sloppily reach over for the clock on the nightstand and read its vicious with little red letters, 6:45 a.m. I used to launch out of bed earlier than that, without a problem, pepping my step and an action plan for each day tucked away neatly in my head. Get up, put coffee on, throw jogging gear on, jog to the newsagents, grab morning paper, jog around Plattfields Park, wave at the other nameless joggers that were part of the morning crew, get home, shower, put on my uniform, shirt, slacks, shine shoes, practically jump in them, slug coffee down and hot wheel it to the station. Times have changed. I go to work, watching for the shoplifters at Topshop, idly catching myself staring at the mannequins' empty faces and finding familiarity there, some comfort in the absentness of their gaze, or should I say, lack of. I often wait for the store to close and just sit, in the back, in the stockroom, surrounded by no-faced beauties. I lie down with them and breathe. It's a fucked up strange thing, but worth trying. Trust me, I'm a police officer. Or was. But yeah, breathing with a body that has no breath is strangely life-affirming. I don't matriculate with others well. I think the guys at the station called me a loner, and there was offence intended but none taken. Now I spend my time with non-thinking stiffs. I can't keep this up forever, I know, but right now, in moments like these, I seek out the solace of their non-gaze. Keep trying to get back that feeling. I don't know who set me up. I don't even know if they picked me on purpose or if I was essentially a victim of chance, but either way, they knew a part of me even I didn't know existed. How many people do you know say they believe in love at first sight? How many mean it? I know it sounds wrong. Know it sounds 3 sheets to the wind, but, well, fuck it, we're all friends here, right? Well, it was like the wind got knocked out of me, like I'd just had the biggest intake of NOS ever, like I'd just caught a fuck off the biggest dick, like I'd slipped inside somewhere warm and fizzing, all at the same time. Sure, I've had relationships over the last couple of years, but nothing stuck. I'd put them off by asking them to lie still, to stay completely still and to stare through me as I slipped my fingers between their legs. Once or twice, I tried to see what it was like while they were asleep. That got me in a fuckload of trouble. Safe to say, whoever it was that landed me with Jennifer did something more than just commit a crime. They committed a crime of passion without even realising it. I carry her around, folded and bent through the many times of looking. I'd taken it out of the case file before I left, and now, when I sleep, the only way I can sleep, I lie her still frame on the pillow next to me and try to get that feeling back. Imagine I'm back there, taking my first look at love. Total blackout.
You've been listening to Tapes and Tales, and today's theme has been awkward situations. 3 brilliant stories from Mercedes Dawson, Abby Hynes and Andy Knudsen. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next time with some more Tapes and Tales.
Tapes and Tales. Tapes and Tales.